Will you pray with me? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts together be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Life can be a challenging and overwhelming experience sometimes. There are times when it feels as if our inner as well as our outer social resources are depleted, and we have nowhere left to turn. The title of Psalm 63 declares it to be a psalm of David when he was in the wilderness of Judah. We know what it feels like to be in a wilderness. The news announces yet another mass shooting, and our hearts sink once again. The political turmoil continues to swirl, and we recognize the familiar feeling of frustration. The pandemic just keeps going, and friends and family get sick, and we find ourselves distressed. There are times when we long for the comfort and the security of a life which seems to be rapidly disappearing. The familiar landmarks are fading fast. Those of us for whom faith is an important part of life can draw strength and comfort from our relationship with God. But sometimes even faith seems to falter. We focus so much on the present distress over what is or is not happening right now, and it is easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. We can't see God in this instant, so we despair. How then do we maintain and nurture our faith in such a way that we not only survive, but thrive even in the midst of our wilderness experiences? There are no simple answers or easy solutions, but we might begin by paying attention to our relationship with God. As with any relationship, it will almost certainly atrophy and flounder if we take it for granted and neglect it. A healthy and vital relationship of any kind, including one with God, will involve active and ongoing participation on our part. We would do well then to follow the example of David in the Psalms. When he found himself in the wilderness, it was God to whom he turned. And when he could not immediately discover God's presence, he sought after it until he found it. O God, you are my God. I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. And where he begins his search is in his own memory, remembering those times in his own life when God had not felt so distant and difficult to find. So I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and glory. Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. For you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I sing for joy. Looking back to God's goodness, which had previously been experienced, led directly into a present tense awareness of God's ongoing presence, even in the wilderness. A steady diet of nostalgia is certainly not healthy. Simply longing for the good old days was not what David was doing. Such attitudes can easily keep us trapped in the past, unable to move forward. But there are times when it is helpful and healthy to look back in order to gain the strength for the journey ahead. In a relationship with friends or spouse, the practice of remember when can be an important part of strengthening the ties which bind us together. Sitting at the kitchen table looking at pictures of important moments in your shared history is one way of remembering who you are for each other. The same is true of our relationship with God. Reflecting on those times when God felt particularly close can help attune and focus our spiritual senses in times of wilderness isolation. Remembering those occasions when we felt very grounded in the faith which sustains us can strengthen hope for our present circumstances. And it is about more than simply the courage to endure. The power of God in our lives can transform the very fabric of our reality. God is fully present in every moment of every day of our living. But sometimes we forget to notice, or we are too overwhelmed by the weight of the moment to see. Remembering God's goodness is a way of drawing our attention back to what has always been and continues to be true. We occasionally need to be reminded of the reality to which Isaiah points us. Even when it feels as if we are in the wilderness, distracted by the pain and the stress and the loneliness which the world can throw at us, God is saying to us, as Isaiah points out, everyone who thirsts comes to the waters, and you that have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Listen carefully to me and eat what is good and delight yourselves in rich food. Paying attention to our relationship with God can help us to remember this important truth. And paying attention before we find ourselves in the wilderness can help prepare us for those occasions when the familiar disappears and life becomes overwhelming. May we remember God's goodness, which has gone before, so that we might continue to experience God's goodness in this present moment. In this season of Lent, may we continue our journey from darkness into light. Amen.